Maryland Realtors significantly updated the property inspections addendum in October of 2022. So I wanted to take a moment to go through some of these changes and walk through this document so that you have a full understanding of how this will impact your business and your clients. So the basic property buyer and seller information remains the same. But in section 1, we set just one very important deadline. This is the deadline for inspections, and this will be the single deadline that applies to all of these inspections. Previously, you could put a separate deadline for each type of inspection. That was, in fact, a messy and confusing process. So now we just have one deadline that governs this entire addendum. So then you have an opportunity to select the type of inspections that you would like permission to perform. Any inspection type that you're requesting, the buyers will need to initial that row. So the structural and mechanical inspection is what people normally think of when they refer to a property inspection. This is the general home inspection where they look at the structure, the mechanics, appliances, plumbing, electrical, to make sure the house is in good working order. So if you are requesting an inspection, this is usually the primary one that you will initial. There are also supplemental inspections that you can request if you have some particular concern. Various mold tests are available if you have a reason to believe that there's mold in the house, or if you have a client that has a specific sensitivity or allergy. This may be an important test to secure for your clients. Environmental would capture chemicals or petroleum, maybe underground or in the surrounding area, if there were an underground storage tank, or if it had some industrial use previously, this might be really helpful. Radon tests are pretty common to be requested. This is a naturally occurring gas that emits from the soil and rocks beneath the home. While it is not an acute, urgent medical crisis to be exposed to radon, over time, if exposed to high levels, it can cause serious problems, including cancers. So especially if maybe the basement is going to be used as a living area or a bedroom even, making sure that it's radon safe could be very important for your buyers. If there's a chimney of any kind, and most especially a wood burning chimney, it's always a good idea to request a chimney inspection. If the house is built prior to 1978, especially if you see flaking or peeling paint, or if there are young children that are going to live in the house, it may be a good idea to secure a lead-based paint inspection. And finally, a wood-destroying insect is always appropriate, just to make sure that termites or any kind of wood-boring beetles are not harming the structure inside and out of the property. Then number 8 provides for additional inspections. This was initially installed as an opportunity to ask for inspections that aren't listed above. So having a pool inspected is a very common one. However, one strategy that many top producers do implement, and it doesn't always make sellers happy to do this, is to give yourself a little bit of a catch-all, to basically say, we would like permission to perform any inspection that would be recommended by the main inspector. So let's say you have no particular concern about mold at first, so you don't request this at the outset. But when your structural and mechanical inspector gets out there, he recommends that you get a mold inspection. If you provide this type of language in section 8, you would then have permission to get that mold inspection. But again, this all needs to happen before your deadline, which was established up here in section 1. The inspection contingency has changed significantly in terms of the buyer's power to terminate. Importantly, if you're using the new contract and the new inspections addendum, this gives the buyer a unilateral right to terminate for any reason after getting their inspection. So if they have the inspection completed and they no longer want to buy the house, they have a right to cancel the contract, and all they have to do is submit the unilateral notice of termination. This is a big, big change, you guys. And this is an important thing to communicate to your sellers, that buyers can back out basically for any reason. And similarly, your buyers need to understand their rights. However, if they do not wish to exercise their right to terminate, they can go into option 2 here, which is really the normal negotiation process, whereby you will send the seller a copy of the inspection and also a written request for repairs and/or any credits. So this is where you would use the property inspections notice, sometimes called the PIN, and you would itemize any requested repairs and send that back to the seller. Again, these requested repairs would have to be submitted by the deadline that is attached here. Then the seller has 5 days to respond to that request for repairs. Following the instructions written on the property inspections notice, the seller could agree to all repairs, some repairs, or none of the repairs. It also gives the seller an opportunity to offer a credit in lieu of certain repairs. So the buyer sends the notice over to the seller. The seller has 5 days to respond, sends an offer over to the buyer, and then the new contract contemplates some additional negotiation. So let's say the buyer isn't entirely happy with the seller's offer response, but they would still like the deal to move forward. They actually have 2 days to put together a new counter offer to maybe ask for an additional repair or an additional credit. So make sure that you read carefully and comply with these deadlines. But this process, as well as the property inspection notice, is really meant to facilitate all of the repairs and negotiations that you would need. As far as the rights and obligations of the parties, the seller has to make the property accessible, and they have to have the utilities in service at the time of inspection. Buyers can't do any invasive or damaging tests or repairs without permission of the seller, and they can't move around personal property without permission. Importantly, if buyer or buyer's inspector causes any damage, the buyer shall promptly reimburse the seller for the costs of any repairs. And just as a final note, to make it clear that you can double check and make sure that these repairs get done, the seller agrees to complete repairs and provide receipts in sufficient time for buyer to reinspect prior to settlement. So the buyer has this right where they can reinspect the property to make sure that A, the work was done, and B, that it was done in a good and workmanlike manner. So this outlines everybody's rights and obligations as it relates to property inspections. This is certainly a big change in this most recent update. So make sure that you're very comfortable with this form.